certain astrological configurations that had been happening that seemed to relate to a lot of the intensity that we've all been experiencing related to the pandemic and social justice issues, and I thought that it was really interesting. She had mentioned configurations that related to what was going on at the time of the American Revolution, at the time of the ending of the Great Depression, as well as at the end of the the abolition of slavery. And I thought that was so interesting. I was so intrigued, and I thought, oh my goodness, I need to reach out to Holly. I want to get her take on this. I would love to know more about her understanding of where we're at collectively. We're in a situation at this time where we may not all be in the same boat, so to speak, but we're in the same storm. And so Holly was so interested, and I'm so excited to be able to explore some of the astrology of what has been happening lately in the world. You know, we entered this age of enlightenment, this golden age, a few years ago, and I was joking with my clients, well, not joking, but like, you know, lightheartedly saying at the end of 2019, I'm really looking forward to 2020, this year of amazing clarity. And holy, have the veils been ripped off, so to speak. It's just
Do you need me to do something?
You did, yeah.
Okay. It's been an incredible year of eye-opening and awakening, and any sense that we could be making out of what's going on or tying it to any configurations would be really interesting to gain a deeper understanding or more of a sense of meaning. And I know that a lot of us look to the stars because we have found so much synchrony or a better ability to relate to life, and so I'm really looking forward, Holly, to hear more about, you know, what it is that you have to say about all of this. I know that we were planning on doing this for quite a while, but because of the way the stars go, there were some configurations that made it challenging, as well as busy schedules and all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to hear more from you, or for you to even introduce yourself maybe to some of my followers who may not be as familiar with you yet.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andrea, and thank you for you being the one, obviously, to come to me to see if this was even something that would be viable for us to do. I guess, you know, we think about where did it all begin, per se, and really, in reality, it all very much began connected in so many ways to an eclipse that we had in 2019. And I've been talking for quite some time about planets within the sky and how they were coming to collide together. And once they collide, what history has shown us is that the collision of the planet Saturn and the collision of the planet Pluto up there in the sky will absolutely bring the world to its knees. So from late 2018 right on up until 2019, I've sort of been waiting, and not just me, but a lot of astrologers have been waiting to see what exactly this configuration actually was going to do for us. So I was just curious before coming even online tonight, because as we know what happens with the heavens, the planets continue to move. We are always in the middle of a cycle of some kind. And some faster moving planets will move around the whole zodiac once a year. Some other planets, such as Saturn, takes 30 years to make it all the way around. Planets such as Pluto, which is way out there, takes 248 years to make it all the way around the zodiac. But as you can imagine, each of them are on their own track, and sometimes they have a tendency to kind of run into each other. And running into each other in astrology language, we say that it is a conjunction. They come and they line perfectly up. So I was curious before coming online here, exactly when was the last time that we had Saturn and Pluto come together? The very last time was actually in the summer of 1947. What did we just finish? We just finished the Second World War, where we looked at all of the atrocities of all of the things that had happened in that Second World War. It's actually in July of 1947. And that same month as well, Israel as a state was created. There was a huge big shifting on the world at large. Then I was curious, okay, so that was then. When did it happen before that? And it was May of 1915. We were in the First World War. So coming into having those planets come back around and rejoin again, I was expecting war. I really truly was. Why? You know, we'd already had wars all the way through. So I guess in a lot of ways we are also in a war. It is a war of a you know, pandemic, but it is still a war. And what also was interesting is we have never, in our years, experienced Saturn and Pluto coming together in the sign of Capricorn. That in itself set up a whole different alignment. Capricorn is all about big business. Capricorn is all about structure. How many of you? Because Saturn and Pluto collided together in January of this year. In January of 2020, Pluto and Capricorn came together. How many of you have the exact same structure, Capricorn, in your life that you did in January? I'd be willing to bet none of you. Big business has certainly changed. Life has certainly changed. What happens inside of the structure, inside of that family unit, has certainly changed. So let me actually share my screen here and show you that in so many ways, this truly started back at the eclipse. Now, we had an eclipse on the 26th of December in 2019. And this was the alignment of the whole eclipse. Look at all of the planets that were sitting at that eclipse, right in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn, as I said, is about big business. Capricorn is about structure. Capricorn is about foundations. But Capricorn is also very constructive. And in 2019, Saturn, pain in the butt planet Saturn, went into the sign of Capricorn. Jupiter, our planet of expansion, also went into Capricorn in late 2019. So our expansion became, so this is not the new beginnings. This is the real structure, because even the eclipse was at the moon and the sun were both at 4 degrees Capricorn. In astrology, Capricorn is a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are the leaders. Cardinal signs are the head of the pack. And so this really was very much affecting Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, and Libra. Those are the 4 signs that have really, really felt the brunt of a lot of this. So that was the eclipse. Then in January, you can see this is Saturn right here at 20 degrees Capricorn. And this is Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn. And in middle January, they both collided. They absolutely collided. And that's really when the world began to change. Then we came forward. First of all, let me say Jupiter don't like being in the sign of Capricorn, because Jupiter's about expansion, Capricorn's about constriction. So right away, we felt that inner discourse happen for us. And in the world of medical astrology, Capricorn has to do with our knees and our bone structure. Since last year, how many of you have had bone issues going on? It's been an issue with trying to get in enough calcium, magnesium, and potassium. Every one of us have really dealt with that. Then life moved on. And you know, we kind of struggled through things. We started to feel life start to slow down a little bit. March and April, we still had Jupiter, that planet of expansion. Jupiter was moving slowly. It was crawling, not walking. And then when we got to May, Jupiter went, no more expansion. We're done. And where we sit today, we still have Jupiter retrograding. Now the great news, the good news is that Jupiter is changing this Saturday. Thank the good Lord, because I am done with Jupiter playing through Capricorn. So let's actually take a quick look at where everything is right now. We looked up into the sky. We this crystal and able to just look up into the sky. This is exactly how the planets are lined up in the sky. Now, for those of you who may not know, I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And right now, if I were to look out my window and had a telescope, right straight up over me is Saturn at 25 degrees Capricorn, retrograding. Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn, retrograding. And Jupiter at 17 degrees Capricorn, retrograding. So I want to talk about what retrograding planets mean for 1 second, because that will help us understand. So all the planets have their ecliptical path around the Earth. And the ecliptical path pretty much looks like an egg. It's an oval. And as the planets come closer to the Earth, so this is the Earth and they're coming by. As the planets come closer to the Earth, that's when they retrograde. They get closer. But what happens if you've got a really super noisy car coming along the road, and as it gets closer to you, what happens? It gets louder. Which is exactly, these planets have been screaming at us since May. And you know what they've been screaming? For the love of God, change. Stop doing what you've always been doing. Stop. Stop now. Change now. Life needs to change. And so with these planets coming together like that, it has to force the world to come to its knees. You know, we as a human race are not really that bright. Unless life becomes really extremely difficult, we just la 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 through life. But we're at the end of that. We're at the end of that. Now the pandemic, some of you believe there is, some of you don't believe there isn't. That doesn't really matter. What matters is you're in a holding pattern. I don't care what you want to call it. And if you think you're not in a holding pattern, then you're in a world all on your own. You got a whole lot of other problems than what you may already see. And so what happens here is Saturn is our sense of responsibility. The big lesson here is, who exactly are you responsible for in life? And that's a big lesson to every single one of us. Pluto is the planet of endings. It's the planet of endings to start new beginnings. Pluto says, enough already. Get off the rat race, enough already. And so what we're going to force you to do, Capricorn, we're going to force you to constrict. We're going to shut down the whole world. We're going to shut down the retail outlets. We're going to shut down your ability to go see friends. We're going to shut down the ability to go to school. We're going to shut down the ability of being connected to family, because you know what? We're going to put you in timeout. Jupiter, our planet of expansion, hit the wall in May. Said, you think you're expanding? I don't think so. I don't think that's happening, but you can give it a try. So these three planets have really been what has been the pain in the ass for us, to say the least. So my question to you, and I want you to think about this internally, how has this reset changed your mindset? Tell you one thing it's changed about how to get off the rat wheel, how to get off the rat race. It has forced all of us to come back to our homes. That's why you can't get wood. Why? Because people have gone back to building. That's why we couldn't get flour. Why? People have learned to come back to their home. They've learned to come back to what's important. Their family, their inner home, their family. It's been a big learning prospect. And you know, there's 4 avenues of our health. There's our mental, our physical, our emotional, and our spiritual. And one of the big things is this has also forced us to get back in touch with our spiritual side. What is it you believe? Doesn't matter whether you believe in astrology or not, but what is it you believe? Because this has forced our time out for ourselves, is what has happened. We're going to see Jupiter start to move forward, as I said, this Saturday, which is the 12th.
Tomorrow.
We're going to see Saturn. Our sense of responsibility is actually going to change on the 29th of September. So both of those planets are going to move their way forward. But the whole point is life has changed. And that was the whole point. We needed the reset. We could not have kept going with the way we were going. We were on a downward spiral, going nowhere fast. The other thing that has happened a few days ago is Mars. This is Mars. Mars is our planet of aggression. And Mars started to retrograde on the 9th of September. So that was 2 days ago. Now Mars is and has been creating, in astrology language, what we call a square with these 3 planets that stalled out. Squares in astrology create annoyances. So we're annoyed that things are not returning fast enough. We're annoyed that we can't get things fast enough. We're annoyed that things we thought should have changed hasn't. That's another lesson. The lesson here is about breathing through it. Learn to breathe through it. You are only one person. You can only do so much. That's what it's all about. And it's about the fact of what is the most precious to us. That's also those planets in Capricorn. Now Mars is retrograding right on up until the 13th of November. Mars, that planet of aggression. So this is also our time to, if somebody pisses us off or gets us upset, or this is time to have the conversation. Because if we don't, one of the things is when Mars turns back around, and that, as I said, is the 13th of November. If we don't speak our piece, say what we need to say, lay our cards on the table, when we get to the 13th of November, if we haven't said that, kapow, up she goes. So we want to work our way through that. We want to make that happen. The good news, certainly the good news, is those planets, not Pluto, because Pluto will stay in Capricorn, which is okay. We're okay with that. But both Saturn and Jupiter will come out of Capricorn. Oh my God, is it yet? You know, you're in a car with a bunch of kids. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Well, that's what I'm saying. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Both Jupiter and Saturn are actually going to come out of the sign of Capricorn by the end of 2020. They both move into Aquarius. Yes, they move into Aquarius by early 2021. So when we say this too shall end, that's what we mean. It will end. You know, we've gone through the wars, First World War, Second World War, like we talked about. We've gone through the bubonic plague. We've gone through all of that. All of it is about a reset. And that's essentially, let me tell you, 2021 won't remotely look like 2020. It won't. It will have a way better flavor to it. So let me stop share. And Andrea, I don't know if there's anything you want to take from there, or?
Well, I feel a lot reassured. Thank you for that. I was looking forward to 2021, but I really appreciate what you've said about the aspects and the wars. That says a lot to me, and I'm speaking not just as a person, but also as a therapist, that, you know, we have had, I would say, a lot of war, and it's not anything new, but it's what has come to light in this global pause, right? In this slowdown, wars that we're having collectively in terms of polarization and divisiveness that has shown up in relation to the pandemic. We're at war with racism, right? That anyone who thought that we were living in a post-racist society has had the veils, you know, taken off about that. Marginalization, how we treat elders, people with disabilities, poverty issues, right? That, like, you know, we've been at war with a lot of this stuff and we're not done. So I appreciate the perspective of needing a slowdown like this to have this come to light, so that, you know, of course, we're going to have to be confronted with things that are very uncomfortable. But if we're not, then how are we going to think, reflect, come together, try to figure out how we're going to move through things, create the change that we maybe thought had happened that truly has not? There's much more work to do, and oftentimes you need a slowdown before you pick the work back up. So I'm hoping that that makes sense in terms of that. And also what you were saying about big business, and big business has also come to light, if you think of that in terms of big pharma companies or government, big technology, insurance, right? That, like, we're seeing the massive impact, but maybe like a little bit too much authority, dominance, monopolization in terms of, you know, how we're living. So I think, yeah, right. So I think that, you know, this makes a whole lot of sense. And if we don't have this come to light, then we can't do anything about it. But I think also there is still that, you know, are we there yet? How do we do this? And you know, there's also been a lot of intensity around scandals and corruption and all that kind of stuff, which I guess would be part of this whole process. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that or insight into that also, if I'm on the right track or not.
Well, I also think too that when we get to Aquarius, so Aquarius is very, 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 very different than Capricorn. They are like night and day, actually. First, you know, Capricorn is Earth. It is connected to the Earth. Hence the whole bit about that whole global warming too, right? The push on the whole global warming bit. But Aquarius is an air sign, and it is the humanitarian sign. So when we talk about, you know, racism, and we're going to see a big shift in mindset coming in when Saturn goes into Aquarius, as well as Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter will love being into Aquarius because Aquarius is all about, let me be free, let me go, let me do what I need to do. You know, we're coming out of the constrictive Capricorn to move out of my way. I'm coming through, right? Because Aquarius is also often 5 years ahead of the time. So we're coming out of that constrictive mindset of only looking at what exactly is happening, like right here, right now, to almost becoming somewhat of a visionary. And where Aquarius is the humanitarian sign, I think we're going to, and Saturn will stay in that sign for 2 years, as it does every time it moves into a sign. But I think, you know, there's going to be a big push on looking at our elders, looking at disability, looking at helping all of our people.
Thank goodness.
It is. It will be a totally different time period. But as I said, you know, and one of the things you and I sort of talked about too is people holding a lot of anxiety over a lot of this. And I think one of the big things that we have lost over time, over these last few years, as the planets went through Sagittarius, I think we've lost our faith, is what has happened. And I think from the religious faith, I think that there has been a lot lost over the last 5 to 10 years. And I think a lot of the anxiety that's going on is that, you know, people don't know what they believe anymore. And what is truth and what isn't truth, you know, the whole bit about fake news bit, all that kind of stuff. But the big key, I think, is that people, I saw an ad on Facebook today where someone said, our society has become addicted to fear and drama. And I think that is so true. So true. And I often talk with clients to say anxiety is when we worry about yesterday or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or worrying about 5, 10, 15 years down the road, right? And I'm sure you talk to your clients the same way about that, right? Bring it back to right now. Right now, I have a roof over my head. Right now, I have food in my belly. Right now, I have water to drink. Right now, I have a bed to sleep in. That is what will massively help us with anxiety.
Yeah, and also taking that time to tune in, to ask the questions, you know, like, who am I responsible for? What am I responsible for? Because when we're living life so out of alignment to our values, or when we're trying to push ourselves to, you know, be in that rat race and living to work and working towards other people's ideals, it doesn't hold anything for us. And so, you know, I think a lot of the tension obviously has to do with the circumstances we're in, but also the inner tension of, you know, not living an authentic life. And so again, like you mentioned, right, like people are coming back to basics and having an opportunity to explore, like, how often do any of us really sit around thinking about what our values are, what's important to us, and then doing the measurement to determine how closely aligned am I to living, you know, in those things, or having a life that helps me to engage that way. And so that, you know, like when people are taking this opportunity to connect and to come back to themselves or to discover themselves for the first time, hopefully that will help to ease some of this tension also.
And I think too, it's forced us with Capricorn, it's forced us to constrict back into our small little bubble. You know, it's not surprising again that you just had a bubble, like that was just it. It's so interesting for me when I watch the news and I physically listen to a lot of the wording, it automatically plays out the alignments, you know? Do we want to open to see if anybody may have some questions?
That sounds great.
Anybody wish to ask a question there? You're more than welcome. You have to unmute because I've muted everybody. One of the things that people have asked is, do I see a second wave? So,
that's a great
you know,
question.
one of the big things we have to remember is that just like people themselves have charts, countries also have charts. And when I look at the chart of Canada versus the chart of the US, and I'll be honest and say I really haven't checked out like China and Brazil, and I really truly haven't. I just looked at North America. The country of Canada and the country of the United States are very different countries. And I realize that without knowing astrology, people are going to say, yep, that's very true. It doesn't make one better and one worse. I'm not saying that. I'm saying vibrationally, it is very different. One of the big things is that Canada is a lunar country. What does that mean? It means that before the birth of Canada, and this is when they signed the declaration, by the way, that's when we determine the birth of a country. The eclipse previous to the birth of Canada was a lunar eclipse. The eclipse following the birth of Canada was a lunar eclipse. So Canada is called a lunar country. the United States, they had a solar eclipse previous to their birth, and they had a solar eclipse following their birth. So they are a solar country. So solar countries are what we refer to as superpowers. They are the countries that often we'll call it, run the world. China is another super country. Brazil. So it's not surprising that you can see how COVID has really affected these particular countries. And a lot of it has come in due to the solar eclipse that happened on the 26th of December. That massively played a part in the United States country. It did not affect Canada, hardly at all. So, did Canada also deal with COVID? Of course we did. Absolutely we did. Do I think we're going to see a second wave happen with Canada? I don't think. I think you'll see pockets intermittently. You'll see some pockets. But because we are a lunar country, we are more of a follower than we are a leader. And I think that in this particular time period, that perhaps has helped us. With the United States, they are a solar country. Nobody tells them what to do. Nobody tells them when to come, what to do, what not to do. And I have to say that I think that has not served them well in this particular time period. So because of that, and because of other things that are happening, not only up in the sky do we have the Saturn and Pluto come together right across the world, but also in the United States birth chart itself, starting in the fall, for the next 2 years, they are going to go through their Pluto return. Now, Pluto is the planet of transformation. It is the planet of endings to make whole new beginnings and shifting. Last time the United States had a Pluto return, they actually went through a civil war. Doesn't mean to say that's what they will do this time around, but it is a possibility that may happen. And perhaps what the Civil War will end up being is the resurgence back and forth of this particular pandemic, right? It may not be a physical war. So I think within the next 2.5 years, we are going to see a massive change happen in the country of the United States. But I do think Canada is just going to float along like Canada normally does, because that's what we do, right? Again, it doesn't make one better than the other. It is the same way with people, physical people. There is nobody better than the other person. We all have a different chart. We all have an absolutely different vibration on that natal chart. We are all spiritual beings living a physical existence. So it's just change that has happened.
That's amazing. We have a question from Jody.
Okay.
Jody actually has two great questions. The first is what you think about, will there be a mandatory vaccine when available? And then secondly, when you might see international travel opening up?
So do I see a mandatory vaccine coming through? I'll tell you the difficulty, mandatory vaccines with Saturn going into Aquarius, I'm not convinced they're going to want to play that game. Because Aquarians, again, are free and don't go telling me what to do and that kind of thing, right? Mandatory vaccine may come into play once we have Saturn going into Pisces, which will follow Aquarius. And that would be in about 2.5 years from now. I had actually predicted, and I still hold that I do think we will have a vaccine in 2020. I do. And I realize that is early and that is not what people are thinking. But I think we're going to see it somewhere around mid to late November. I think we're going to see a vaccine. And I think it's going to be somebody in Canada coming up with a vaccine. And for me, I personally see it as somebody with Asian eyes. When do I see international travel opening? Well, again, you see, Saturn's going to break down those borders. So for me, I would think international travel, it depends on where internationally you're going. I do think the US is probably going to be, encapsulated for a while. So Jody, I don't know if you were thinking of anywhere particular. Were you thinking across Canada or?
Well, I'm living in Calgary right now, but I was specifically wondering about Scotland and Iceland.
Yeah, so they are probably, I think we're going to see that by certainly, I would think February, March of next year.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a question from Karen. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Karen's asking how Canada's finances look over the next couple of years as we would be recovering from the pandemic.
Let me share my screen here. And I should be able to, I think it's on this computer, that I can look up countries. This is Canada. So this is the astrological chart for Canada. It was July 1st, 1867. So when we now look at where the planets are now, so with regards to the money and the finances, I think what we're going to do is see Canada come forward with a whole different financial plan when we get Uranus, the planet of unexpected events, coming to join up with Pluto. So that should be roughly about the spring of 2022. I'll tell you what's rather an interesting story, because Uranus is the planet of unexpected events. Taurus is the planet usually around our financial markets, our money markets. And on my Facebook page, the Holly Poole Astrology Facebook page, when we had Uranus start to retrograde, so Uranus retrograde on the 15th of August. Do you know what also happened on the 15th of August? Our Canadian finance minister quit. I had said on that day, everybody take a full note of the banks, of the national banks, watch and see what happens with the finances on the world stage. I was expecting our dollar, our US Canadian dollar to shift and change. And then out comes Bill Moreau and says, I'm done, I'm quit. Very affected by the astrological alignments. And so Uranus right now is retrograding. It's just, we're going to see the money markets just do just this, not really make any big, huge, massive changes. until it turns, and it will turn on the 14th of January. So check out on the 13th, 14th, 15th of January, what's happening on the world markets, what happens with price of oil, what happens with all of that kind of thing, because that's when we're going to see the topsy-turvy changing for coming into the spring. But I think Uranus here, as I said, this is our chart of Canada. Uranus coming towards Pluto, we're going to be there in the spring of 2022. The whole way that Canada will deal with cash and finances will absolutely change. What we know and how we know Canada dealing with the finances will be totally different when we come to the spring of 2022. So one of the things that I like to do in a situation like this is actually know that going in. And so that's showing us ending part of May in 2022. So I like to kind of watch then February, March, April, and you just see it roll its way out. Everybody has an astrological chart just like this. And it just astounds me on how the universe or God or whatever your belief system is, makes the energy show up, line up exactly according to your chart. Like, how does that happen? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So Jody was just asking, like, do you see that as like a major shift in terms of maybe moving to a cashless society? Or I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with greater equity towards people who are not having enough these days?
That would not be part of that. This would definitely be about moving to a cashless society. But I think we will also then do a focus, because the seventh house, this is the seventh house in a chart. The seventh house has to do with being a country chart, has to totally do with the people who live within that country. And Saturn says, you know, we do feel a sense of responsibility towards our people, believe it or not. We do. We sometimes may not appear to, but we are a country that does pay attention to our people. And I think that when we come to the spring, one of the things I think we're going to see is, you know, a lot of our younger people are leaving Canada. They're going to other countries. And I think that will be a rude awakening coming to the spring of 2022, that they will have to take a look at. Plus, by that point in time, we also have Pluto coming to the end of being in Capricorn. Pluto's been in Capricorn at that stage about 20 years. And Pluto will move into, doesn't show me there. Pluto will move into Aquarius roughly in the fall of 2024. And that will make a differentness of, you want to go back to 248 years ago? That'll give you an idea as to what that'll look like. We're always in a cycle. We're always doing a cycle.
Wow. And speaking of people moving and what we've been talking about in terms of division, Jody had also asked if you see Quebec or Alberta separatist movements perhaps being successful.
Well, one of the other interesting pieces is that I had said we are a lunar country as a country, but there are 3 provinces within the country of Canada that is solar. They don't fit in Canada. One of them is Quebec. One of them is Newfoundland, and the other one's BC. So there is always a fight with those 3 provinces about never getting enough, not feeling fit in, not being heard. nobody paying attention, not getting enough money, just not. And what's also interesting, and I realize, I don't know, we probably shouldn't have gone through this whole political side, but Mr. Trudeau is a solar person. And so when he originally came into power, we needed that bright light of that solar at that point in time, because he came in as a full entire light to this lunar country, right? And it's the same with the United States, you know, being a solar country. Obama is a lunar person. He was not liked in the States. They would say that he was perhaps the president who did the least for them. Whether that's right or not doesn't matter. But, you know, that's what happens in politics.
Okay, and Chris was just asking any view particularly for December 21st, 2020, that there seemed to be some interesting alignments or aspects there.
For Canada, is that what it is, or just for Canada? Or
Yes.
just as a personal thing?
I think for Canada, yeah.
Okay, so that was 2020.
Yeah.
December 21st.
Yes.
So this is December 21st now. Always when we look at a chart, the inside circle is the natal chart. So the natal chart of Canada. We were looking at a person's chart. The inside chart would always be the same. The outside rim is the planets as they are moving around up there in the sky. So the 21st of December is, we have both Saturn and Jupiter will have then moved into the sign of Aquarius. And one of the big things with this alignment is, you know, it's coming into the 11th house, which is all about trying to make hopes and dreams and wishes and things coming into play there. That's a really, really lovely alignment to have, with Saturn certainly coming into play. We are at the end, the moon is in the sign of Pisces, so a little later in the day, by the time when the moon would get into the next sign, which would be Aries. So we're at 4:25 in the afternoon. 4:25 in the afternoon is a nice time, but a better time would be a couple of hours later. So if you got any plans going on, I probably wouldn't do it for 4:25, but I would do it for 6:25, because then the moon will have moved to Aries. And Aries is a fire. Jupiter and Saturn is air. Fire and air work really, really well together.
Okay, and do we have time for another question?
Yep.
Yeah, Jess. Debbie is asking about, is the reason we're seeing more suicides because of energy shifts and astrology? Is this in the charts indicated anywhere?
So, so suicide is often connected. Let me come to here and now. Let me come to here and now. So this is where we are right now. One of the difficulties that's happening in the sky, and have been for a while, is Neptune in Pisces. Pisces sometimes can, not always, but bring in some mental illness for us, the work with mental illness, because Neptune is very, very strong in Pisces, and sometimes this can bring in an illusionary mindset, you know? And with that, especially today, we have the sun up in the sky opposing Neptune. So today is a real big question of what exactly is reality? That's a real big question for today. But Neptune started to retrograde here on the 23rd of June. And people dealing with mental illness while Neptune is retrograding can be very, very difficult for them because of the elusiveness. And sometimes when looking at people's charts, I will look to see where in the chart that Pisces shows up for them, because it can be connected to addictions, right?
Yeah, okay. And then we have one more question, maybe that will be the last question you might have time for, where Debbie is asking about, Judy is asking about potentially Joe Biden's chart, or is there any sense of him being a saving grace for the US?
I will tell you 100%, I have not looked at Joe Biden's chart. I can't comment about it. I will make a prediction that I think Trump is going to go back in. Not that I necessarily am a Trump supporter, but I do think he will. There's a lot going on presently in Trump's chart that is promising for the upcoming election. Trump himself was born on a solar eclipse. In ancient times, when they would be looking for new kings, they would actually go out and force a mother to give birth on a solar eclipse. And then they would make the child be the king of royalty. And if you don't think that Trump thinks he's royalty, then you should really ask him.
Okay, not an answer I was expecting, but yeah.
He was. And he has a lot of, when I teach astrology, I actually use his chart quite extensively for many reasons. One of the big things with his particular chart, his sun sign is in Sagittarius. His sun sign is in one or the other. Sometimes they're in Gemini with his moon in Sag, or his, yes, that's correct. He has a sun sign in Gemini, and so that gives him the duality side, right? Try this, try that, try this, try that, try that, try that. And then his moon, how he deals with emotions, is in Sagittarius. Well, that's straight across from his sun sign. So first and foremost, he's always in a fight between his head and his heart. Like that's a constant fight. And if anybody knows any Sagittarians, they also realize that with Sagittarians, it's in the head and out the mouth, and not a whole lot of thought put behind it. And that's his tweets. Someone pisses him off, sets off the emotional side. Plus, he has a very strong fixed star in his chart at 29 degrees Leo called Regulus. And Regulus fixed star also was of royalty and kings of ancient times. And but it's also, it has a bit of a double-edged sword to it. The fixed star Regulus says that we have come to be a king and serve the people. However, if you do revenge, it will come back on you tenfold. That's the fixed star Regulus. So whoever his astrologer is, they might want to tell him that.
That's an important lesson for all of us.
It is. And if you have something in your chart at 29 degrees Leo, you really need to pay attention to that. Anyway.
Okay. Well, this is awesome. So do you have any concluding comments? Is there anything else you wanted to share?
I just want to say to everybody, first of all, thank you so very much for showing up tonight. But number two as well, you know, we are affected by the planetary alignments. And always remember, if you are beating your head against a wall to make something happen, give it up. It means you're on the wrong path. Life is not meant to be difficult. If you are living life and life is feeling difficult, you are going against the tides. Stop it. Sit back. Take a good look at things. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you so much for
Great.
sharing your insight and your, you know, your gifts, and for helping us gain some clarity and make sense of things. We really appreciate it.
We'll do this again sometime, Andrea.
That sounds amazing.
Cool. Thank you. Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.